The Dress That Never Was by Echoes of Greatness. 2018, I was 25. The sky was clear that morning. I remember because I woke up humming a song Kima had sent me the night before, something by Johnny Drill, soft, soulful, full of promise. I was supposed to go gown shopping that day. Our wedding was just a few days away, June 9th, a Saturday. We had spent months planning, from the floral arrangements to the music playlist. Even our future kids' names were already chosen. Amarachi, Zara and Miracle. Chima always said we'd raise queens. We met during NYSC. His khaki trousers were always too tight, and he had a gap in his teeth when he smiled, but he was funny, focused, fearless. The kind of man who would offer his last bottle of water on a hot parade ground, who volunteered at the children's ward during his off days. He was different. He made me believe in something I had never known before. Certainty. In a world where everything felt temporary, Kima felt permanent, until the call came. May 31st, 10:42 a.m. I was folding a veil, white, simple, the one I wanted to wear during the vow exchange. My phone rang. It was his friend Ebuka. I answered, cheerful. Hello? Silence. Kioma, he finally said, his voice trembling like a weak roof under storm. There's been an accident. I stopped breathing. Which Chima? I asked stupidly. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. A bus. It exploded. I dropped the veil. No survivors. Everything stopped. My lungs, my heart, the ticking of the wall clock, the laughter from my neighbor's TV. It was as if the universe itself bowed in a moment of mourning. I didn't scream. I walked out of the room, sat on the staircase, and stared into space for what felt like hours. When my mother arrived, she hugged me. I didn't respond. My body had become a shell, a house with no lights on. Kioma, say something, she whispered, but I couldn't. Because what do you say when the person you planned your future with becomes part of your past, in a single breath? The next few days were blurry. Visitors came and went. They brought soup and silence. Some whispered that it was spiritual. Others said it was a sign I should never have been with Chima, but no one brought him back. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every song reminded me of him. Every corner of our apartment carried his scent. His toothbrush still stood in the cup beside mine. One morning, I found myself at his side of the bed, clutching the pillow, crying like a child. His voice kept ringing in my head. If anything ever happens to me, just promise me you'll keep dreaming for both of us. Then came the burial plans. They wanted to bury him quietly in his village, a simple brown coffin, a traditional rite. I refused. He was my husband, I said. One uncle scoffed. He wasn't even married to you yet. I stood up. We had plans, vows, a ring. Whether or not the church blessed it, heaven did. They all fell silent. That night, I made a decision that shook my entire community. The days after the burial moved like thick smoke, slow, suffocating, and shapeless. I didn't unpack my wedding box. It remained at the foot of my bed, untouched. Inside were the tiny accessories I had gathered with love, satin gloves, a rhinestone tiara, our matching vow cards, and a bottle of perfume Chima once said made me smell like forever. But forever didn't come. What came instead was silence and whispers, lots of them. My compound neighbor, Mummy Ifeoma, knocked one afternoon. She didn't bring food, she brought gossip. Chioma, my dear, I'm only saying this because I care. But you need deliverance, she said, twisting her wrapper. You walk down the aisle with a coffin. That's not ordinary, that's spiritual. I just smiled faintly and closed the door. Behind it I collapsed. They called me cursed. My friends stopped calling. Some blocked me entirely. One even sent a voice note. Chioma, I love you, but being around you feels heavy. It's like death follows you. Even my former pastor stopped checking in. The world had placed me in a box, just like the one I buried Chima in. Not a bride, not a widow, just something in between. But what no one realized was that while their words stung, they also stripped me down to my core and exposed something else inside me, a quiet fire. I started writing again. Late at night, when grief pressed hard against my lungs, I'd take out my journal and scribble. Poems, letters, memories of Chima, dreams we shared. I wrote like a woman trying to breathe underwater. I also began visiting the land he once showed me on a video call, the one he said we'd use to build an orphanage someday. Back then we were joking, laughing, dreaming, but now, standing on that dusty land alone, something whispered, "This dream doesn't have to die." One morning, while sorting through our memory box, I stumbled on an envelope. It wasn't like the others. It was sealed with wax and marked, "Open only if." Curious, I broke the seal. Inside was a letter written in Chima's sharp, slanted handwriting. "If anything ever happens to me before we marry, promise me 2 things. 1, don't stop living. 2, build that orphanage, even if it's just 1 bed and a roof. Start. Let love grow there." My hands shook, my lips quivered, and something inside me cracked wide open. The very next day I sold my car. It was the one thing of value I had left, my Corolla. Chima used to wash it every Saturday and call it our first child. I took it to the dealer myself. When he asked, "Why are you selling?" I smiled and said, "To keep a promise." I posted Chima's story on Facebook that night, not for pity, but to invite others into the vision. The caption read, "He didn't make it to the altar, but he made it to my forever. I'm starting the Chima Foundation, 1 bed at a time. If all you can give is prayer, give it. If you can share this, please do." Love should never die. By the end of the week, donations started trickling in. 1,000 naira here, $500 there, $10 from someone in Canada, 50,000 naira from an anonymous donor with the message, "Your love shook me, build it." I cried, not because of the money, but because people were believing in something that came from the ashes of my heartbreak. The land became my second home. Every morning I'd go there with a flask of tea and a folding chair. I watched builders lay blocks where my heart once laid dreams. I sketched out rooms with my pencil and tears. The architect asked me, "What should the rooms be called?" I said without thinking, "Let's name each one after a promise." He smiled and nodded. Powerful. The first room was hope, then faith, then comfort, mercy, peace. But the largest one? I named it Forever. It was the playroom, where laughter would echo, where kids would know safety, where love, though born in grief, would find new breath. Then I met Favor. She came in one rainy afternoon, wet, shivering, abandoned by a gate with no note. Just a little girl, barely 6, holding a plastic spoon. She didn't talk for days, but she watched me. One afternoon, I caught her looking through my drawer of Chima's letters. She held one up and asked, "Did he write this for me too?" I smiled through my tears. "Yes, baby. All the love he wrote for me, I'm giving to you now." From that day, she called me Mama Chi, and I didn't correct her, because maybe in some way I had been reborn too. Not as a bride, not as a widow, but as a mother of many. Word spread again, but this time not whispers of madness, whispers of miracles. The girl who bought a coffin instead of a dress, she was now housing abandoned children, feeding them, loving them, raising them in memory of a man she buried in lace. And on the first anniversary of Chima's death, I wrote another letter. This time not just for me, but for the world. It read, "You didn't walk me down the aisle, but you walk with me through every smile I now see. This orphanage, this dream, is the altar we never got, and every child that finds home here is a piece of our forever." I posted it with a photo of the white coffin, the one I had chosen, the one people mocked, and beneath it I captioned, "They laughed when I bought a coffin instead of a dress, but now, even heaven claps." June 9th, 2018. The date I'd written 1,000 times in my wedding planner. The day I was supposed to become Mrs. Chioma Chima. But instead of roses, there was rainfall. Instead of music, there were murmurs. Instead of joy, there was a hole in my chest that no white dress could hide. And yet, I wore it. The dress had been tailored by hand, lace bodice, pearl detailing, and a flowy train Chima had insisted on because he said, "It will make you look like you're walking on clouds." I wore it, not for glamour, not for attention, but for goodbye. The church doors opened, heads turned, not with awe, but with confusion. Some had come expecting a simple burial, a short service, maybe a few tears. What they got instead was a bride walking down the aisle behind a white coffin. My bouquet trembled in my hands, but my steps didn't. I walked with purpose. Each step said, I remember you, I honor you, I will never forget you. There was no music, only the choir humming a hymn, Nearer my God to thee. I reached the front and placed the bouquet on his coffin. Then I turned to face the crowd. People stared, shocked, moved, silent. Even the priest froze. Tears welled in his eyes as he opened his Bible. But instead of reading from Psalms, he closed the book. I have done thousands of weddings and burials, he said, but none like this. He walked down from the altar, stood beside me, and whispered, This is sacred. Then I did something no one expected. I pulled out the vow card, the one Chima and I had written together weeks before. Our promises, printed and laminated. I read mine aloud. I promise to stand by you, even in your absence, to live the life we dreamed of, to turn our love into legacy, to carry you, not in pain, but in purpose. The church was silent. Even the walls, it seemed, were crying. And then I said the words, Chima, I do. No music played after, no reception, no dancing. Just the slow, painful journey to the cemetery. The white coffin, our wedding gift, rested in the back of the hearse. And behind it, I sat in the same gown, holding his vow card. At the grave, I dropped two things into the earth. One, my tiara. Two, the letter he wrote me the night before his last journey. I'll see you soon, my bride. We'll change the world, together or apart. I watched as the sand swallowed my forever, then walked away, alone, in a white dress soaked with rain and sorrow. The next week, the backlash began. She has turned burial into drama. This girl is obsessed with attention. Why would you wear a wedding gown to bury a man? Is that not fetish? But I didn't respond, because people only see the act. They don't feel the ache. They don't know what it's like to choose between breaking down or building something. I had made my choice. The Chima Foundation was beginning to take shape. Builders worked. Donations trickled. I wrote grants, created proposal decks, and sat in online classes to learn about fundraising. Every night I still wore my ring, not as a widow stuck in the past, but as a woman still walking with purpose. Then came a day that changed everything. A letter arrived. No name, no address, just a note. I saw your story. I've never cried like that before. Enclosed is a check. Build. Let the world see what love can do. 2 million naira. I almost fainted. We finished the first wing in 4 months. 10 beds, 1 tiny library, a warm kitchen. Every child that stepped through the gate got a bed, a warm plate of rice, and a hug from me. I told them, here you are not abandoned. You are chosen. Some came from police raids, others were found by the roadside. But each one, a piece of Chima's promise. And then came something I didn't expect, forgiveness. One day, I received a call from Chima's mother. We hadn't spoken since the burial. She had once told me, you're the reason he travelled that day. I carried that weight in silence, but now she said, I visited the orphanage. I saw what you've done. I'm sorry, my daughter, thank you, for keeping my son alive in the most beautiful way. We both wept. Healing began. On the 2nd anniversary of his passing, we unveiled a statue in front of the orphanage, not of Chima, but of 2 children holding hands, carved from marble. At the base, the inscription read, Born from love, built through loss, standing in grace. That evening, I returned home, sat on the floor, read one of his old letters, and whispered, We made it, baby, not to the altar, but to something even bigger. Reef is a thief. It steals laughter from your lungs, sleep from your nights, and peace from your mornings. But one thing it never stole from me was Chima's letters, over 50 of them, tucked in a small drawer by my bedside, sealed in envelopes of various colours, blue, white, pink, and brown. Some were written in pen, others in pencil, some long, some barely 4 lines, but each one was a heartbeat frozen in ink, He had written them randomly, during our time together, on birthdays, anniversaries, or just on nights he missed me. I had read most of them, until one night, I found one I'd never seen. It was dated a year before his death. The envelope was marked in red ink. Open only when you feel like giving up. I almost put it back, but my hands wouldn't let me. I opened it. Inside was a letter that changed everything. My Chioma, if you're reading this, then I'm not there with you. And if I'm not there, it means life did what it does best. Interrupts. First, I'm sorry. I wanted a forever with you. I still do. But if God calls me home before we get there, promise me 2 things. 1. Cry, but don't crumble. 2. Build that orphanage, even if it's just 1 child. Start. Let the world know our love didn't end in death, it bloomed in purpose. I believe in you. And I'll be watching from the best seat in the sky. Forever yours, Chima. I dropped the letter and screamed, not from pain, but from clarity. This wasn't a burial story. It was a blueprint. The next morning I called a friend from university, Uchechi, now a non-profit strategist in the UK. I told her everything, the orphanage, the letters, the backlash, the silent nights. She listened, then said, let's build it bigger. Together we designed a proposal, structured it into phases. Phase 1, housing 10 children. Phase 2, adding a library and kitchen. Phase 3, school partnerships. Phase 4, a storytelling centre, where every child writes their own story. I called it the Chima Foundation for Lost Children. Our motto? Love writes the last chapter. I digitized Chima's letters. Every child that joined the home would receive one, modified and personalized. Favor, my little shadow, was the first to get hers. She opened the envelope, read the printed note aloud. Dear Favor, you are not forgotten, you are not forsaken. You are the heart of someone's dream, and from today, you are home. She looked up at me and asked, did he write this for me? I smiled. Yes, baby. All the love he wrote for me, I'm giving to you now. Then came Timmy. He was 9, picked up from under a bridge in Ajagunle. Wore oversized shoes and eyes too old for his age. On his first night he didn't sleep. He sat beside my door and whispered, if I sleep, will you leave too? I sat with him till morning. Told him the story of Chima, of the wedding that became a burial, of the foundation that rose from tears. By sunrise he said, I want to write too. We gave him a journal. He wrote for 5 hours. His first story was The Day I Didn't Run Again. The orphanage began to fill, 1 child, then 3, then 10, and every night we had a ritual, dinner, story hour. Then each child would place a letter beneath their pillow. Letters that spoke life, letters that told them they were wanted, seen, loved. Some letters were printed from Chima's archive, others we wrote together, but each one was powerful. Then something unexpected happened. A journalist from a popular Lagos blog visited after reading my viral Facebook post. She was supposed to stay for 30 minutes. She stayed 3 hours. By the end, she was crying. She asked, why haven't you shared this with the world? I replied, because I wasn't sure the world would care. She took a photo of me holding Chima's letter, beside Favor. She posted the story with the headline, she wore a wedding dress to bury her fiancé. Now she's giving orphans a home built on heartbreak. It went viral. Over 1 million views. Celebrities reposted. Donors called. Churches sent support. And my favourite part, hundreds of people began writing letters to our children. Letters came from Australia, Germany, Ghana, and Anambra. Some were funny, some were poems. Some said, Dear child, I don't know your face, but I know your pain, and I want you to know you matter. We printed each one, framed a few, and created a wall of words in the storytelling room. Now, every child who walks in sees love, in hundreds of languages, but I didn't stop there. I wrote a book titled The Dress That Never Was, a memoir, raw, honest, full of tears and letters. I donated 100% of the proceeds to the orphanage. It became a bestseller on Amazon. One reviewer wrote, this isn't just a love story, it's a resurrection story. One night as I locked up the storytelling room, I paused, looked around at the fairy lights, the wall of letters and the mural of Chima drawn by one of the children. Then I whispered, we didn't get forever, but we got legacy. They say grief is a wound time will heal, but time did not heal me, purpose did. 3 years after Chima died, the orphanage was no longer just a dream stitched together by morning, it was alive, 3 full wings, 87 children, 10 staff members, a storytelling room, a garden of remembrance, and a framed white gown behind glass hanging at the entrance beside the words, "Love buried here bloomed again." I still wear the ring, not as a prisoner of the past, but as a keeper of a promise. Every time I hear a child laugh, every time one says, "Mama Chi," with sleepy eyes, every time a child writes their first story, I whisper under my breath, "We made it, Chima." And then one day, he came back, not Chima, but the priest who cried at his burial. It was a Thursday afternoon. The children were in the courtyard, chasing soap bubbles. He stood at the gate in his white collar, now grey with age, tears in his eyes. "I wasn't sure I'd find this place," he said softly, "but I needed to see it." I welcomed him in. He walked slowly, stopping at every photo, Chima's picture, the children's paintings, the mural of the church aisle. Finally, he turned to me and said, "I have officiated over 300 weddings, but none as sacred as the one I saw you walk through alone." We sat by the garden. He asked about the children. I told him about Favor, who now teaches the younger ones to read, Timmy, who won a National Writing Award, little Dara, who once had nightmares but now leads evening prayers. He wiped his eyes and said, This is what resurrection looks like." On the 5th anniversary of Chima's death, we held a remembrance celebration. Not a vigil, not a mourning, but a celebration of love that lived twice. The children wore white, each held a letter to someone they'd lost. We lit candles, read stories and released paper lanterns into the sky. One child asked, "Will it reach heaven?" I smiled. "Chima's definitely reading it already." I wrote one final open letter that night. "Dear Chima, we didn't grow old together, we didn't raise Amarachi, Zara or Miracle, but we did build something holy, something bigger than both of us." They laughed when I bought a coffin instead of a wedding dress, but now they send donations. They call me brave, but the truth is, I was just a girl who refused to let love die quietly. You didn't make it to the altar, but you made it to my forever, and every child here is a vow fulfilled. We made it, forever yours, Chilma. I posted it on Facebook with a video montage. The children reading, playing, growing. It went viral, 2.7 million views. Media houses came, churches sponsored wings, celebrities donated silently, and one school in London pledged to send books for life. But the most powerful comment came from someone anonymous. "You turned a white dress into a war cry, a coffin into a cradle. I don't know you, but I owe you. You reminded me that pain isn't the end, sometimes it's the beginning." Now, whenever I stand in front of the children to speak, I no longer tremble. I carry the courage of the woman who buried her husband-to-be in lace. I carry the wisdom of the widow who wrote letters to heal others. I carry the strength of a broken heart that refused to stay broken. The children know the story. They tell it to visitors. Our mama wore a wedding dress to a funeral, but from that funeral, she birthed us all. I don't cry as much anymore, but sometimes when no one's watching, I visit Chima's grave, place a fresh rose, and whisper all the things I forgot to say. And then I say one thing I always remember. We did it, love. We didn't get forever, but we got purpose. And in purpose, we found grace. If this story touched your soul, subscribe, like, and comment. Love never dies. And subscribe Echoes of Greatness for more stories where pain becomes purpose and the impossible becomes holy.